Good afternoon. I wish to call to order. I got a new book here, so I'm trying to sort this out here. This regular meeting of council at 3:30. Council would like to acknowledge the Ucluelet on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. Notice of video recording. Audience members and delegates are advised that this proceeding is being video recorded and broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. I understand the notice of temporary use permit for 2117, which is 10.1, has been removed from this agenda for reasoning that it's proper notification to some of the adjacent neighbors had not been done. So we're just going to be deleting that from today's agenda. Are there any other additions or changes to the agenda? Seeing none. Okay. Looking for approval of the agenda with that one deletion.
Move approval.
I'll second.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Adoption of the September 9th special minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any errors or omissions? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And the adoption from September 21st, regular minutes.
I'll move adoption.
Second.
Any errors or omissions? Councillor Hoare?
Just a comment, page 13. I also attended the West Coast Housing Focus Group.
Okay.
But that's it.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor with that one item from Ms. or Councillor Hoare? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any other unfinished business? And mayor's announcements. Audience members must wear a mask and remain seated except when speaking from the podium. Looks like there's some eager speakers this evening. Please wear your mask and return to your seat after you speak. I don't know if it was done in the last one. I was sent my regrets in the last one, council meeting, but did we welcome our new CAO at their last regular council meeting? Anyways, Dwayne, I just want to do a shout out. Dwayne's our new CAO. Don't know if we have formally, publicly invited you to the community, but you've been here how many weeks now? 5 weeks?
Going on 6 now.
Going on 6. It's flying by, isn't it? So,
It sure is.
anyways, we're very happy for you to be here working with us and all the staff, and we welcome you and hope that you have a good rain jacket.
Thank you very much. Enjoying it already.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Dwayne.
Are we on? We missed looking at ours.
Okay, moving along, public input. Are there any members of the public that wish to ask any questions? And are there any that have come in via Zoom or telephone?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Perfect. We have a delegation, so I'm assuming that's going to be via Zoom today.
Yes, it is. Mr. Fisher is available.
Perfect. We wish to welcome Robert Fisher, Project Coordinator for the British Columbia Social Procurement Initiative. Mr. Fisher, are you on? Welcome.
Good afternoon, Benno and members of council. I'm wondering if Colleen Evans, councillor for Campbell River and co-chair of BCSPI, is also able to be promoted.
Yeah, I think they're looking
You
at that.
should be able to speak now.
Fantastic. Okay, we'll get right on with this. Thanks so much, obviously, for having us. I'm Rob Fisher. I'm the project coordinator for the British Columbia Social Procurement Initiative, or BCSPI. I'm very pleased to be joining you from the Lekwungen territories here in Victoria to present to you today about the opportunity for the District of Ucluelet to become a member of BCSPI. I'm very pleased to be joined this afternoon by BCSPI co-chair and councillor for the City of Campbell River, Colleen Evans. And I'll just invite Colleen to provide some brief opening remarks as both co-chair of BCSPI and also councillor and existing BCSPI member community.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you very much to the Council of Ucluelet for inviting BCSPI to speak with you today. We are really looking forward to sharing the presentation with you, but most importantly, we're looking forward to hearing your questions and how BCSPI can be a support to the goals and objectives that you have as a council. Rob will be doing the presentation and then we'll leave time at the end. We certainly appreciate this is a time delegation. We'll leave time at the end for you to ask any questions of us. And as a fellow elected official, I certainly recognize that you will be looking at this through a policy lens, but we hope that you'll also see that this is a real opportunity to build capacity within the organization and with your staff as well. So on that point, I'll just turn it back over to Rob, and I look forward to, again, hearing all of your comments at the end.
Thanks, Colleen. Just going to share screen now, and if you could just let me know if you see this.
Yes.
Brilliant. So during this short presentation, we'll open up with some information about the what, why, and what's possible with social procurement, and then look at how these new best practices can be implemented at local government level, and talk a bit about what BCSPI is and how becoming a member can support that implementation. So what is social procurement? Or simply put, social procurement practices leverage additional social value from existing purchasing. When we look at the evolution of procurement, we can see that it was only in the 60s that we started to include green considerations in our procurement practices. And now just as recently as 2018, social considerations are starting to emerge in the procurement process, considering the social impact of our purchasing. And when we add that additional social consideration into our existing purchasing, we're creating not only the usual purchaser and supplier value, but creating additional benefits for our communities. So why are more and more governments and purchasers starting to look at social procurement? Well, every purchase has an economic, environmental, and social impact. And so when we focus on best value for money, procurement is much more than a financial transaction. When we mobilize our existing spending to include a social value component, procurement becomes a tool for building healthy communities. Key opportunity areas for social procurement are employment opportunities, skills training and apprenticeship opportunities, social value and diversity in the supply chain, and broader community economic development opportunities. And social procurement objectives can be connected directly to the needs of a community and the government's social and strategic planning goals. For example, looking at the District of Ucluelet's 2019 to 2022 strategic planning goals, social procurement can contribute to all of the plan's focus areas. It's maintaining quality of life, community development and well-being, partnerships and collaboration, and asset and infrastructure. It's also worth pointing out the District of Ucluelet, the District of Tofino and the ACRD are existing members of BCSPI and both undertaken successful pilot projects and taken part in collaborative shared learning from the initiative. And because social procurement can generate local economic activity, local employment opportunities and social impacts, it's now being adopted by more and more governments and organisations as a key tool in the COVID-19 recovery toolbox. And when we think about government spending, there are two main avenues for social procurement implementation. One is through the social purchasing of goods and services. This is the purchasing of all the items you currently buy for your operations and community services. These are things like office supplies, catering, printing, events collateral, janitorial services and maintenance services. And the other is through major infrastructure or construction projects, where you can explore predetermined community benefits through a community benefit agreement or include community employment benefits. Larger projects like this also yield many opportunities for social procurement from the design stage through the actual build and ongoing maintenance and servicing. Some of the social procurement key implementation options for local governments are listed here. We've got our under threshold and direct award purchasing, which is discretionary buying, which is often dictated by your policy at a certain monetary level, where going out to tender is not required. And this includes things purchased on corporate credit cards and other items that fall below those internal purchasing thresholds. If the cost and definition of the procurement require you to go out to tender, is when you can include social value criteria into the bidding process by weighting it and evaluating it along with the other purchasing criteria you normally see, like cost, quality, experience, and environmental considerations. In larger projects, there are opportunities to unbundle contracts and create predetermined community benefit agreements. And exploring contractor supply chains is another key opportunity. There are ways to include social procurement in purchasing where it might not otherwise be obvious. For example, contracting a design firm for the planning stage of a project or a consultant to carry out more clerical-based work, where you can explore potential bidders' existing supply chains, where they buy their catering, cleaning, and office supplies, for example. And social procurement can be included in government purchasing policy, which allows community social value outcomes to be defined and considered in the procurement process. One big question that always comes up around social procurement is it legal? What about the trade agreements? Well, yes, it is legal, but yes, the trade agreements do, of course, still apply. The key thing to know here is that you cannot restrict competition, but you can require community outcomes from all bidders by including that social value consideration in the process. And notably, trade agreements also have exceptions for non-profits and other community organisations, as well as their own financial thresholds that allow for some more flexibility to work below. The other big question is, does it cost more? Well, through BCSPI and other similar initiatives, there's no evidence that this is true. Generally, requesting community outcomes from bidders will not increase the overall price, well, it will increase the overall value. And depending on how you consider the procurement opportunity, lowest price does not always need to be the defining factor when extra social value is being created from the procurement and best value is being considered. Many governments like to know how much additional load will join in BCSPI in implementing social procurement put on our existing resources. Well, the good news is BCSPI takes the heavy lifting part away and meets governments where they're at with resource capacity, creating a social procurement journey that is achievable and supported by all the training, templates, coaching, and other resources available to its members. So now I've looked at some of the opportunities around social procurement. We'll talk a little bit about how BCSPI is helping governments and other anchor purchasers across the province to implement these new practices. So BCSPI is a collaborative initiative on a mission to improve the health of our communities and the strength of our economies by changing the culture of public sector procurement. And we do this by providing local governments and other purchasers with shared collaborative learning network that provides training, coaching, and a wide array of resources to support this social procurement journey. The beauty of the initiative is that it's run by local governments for local governments and is governed by a steering committee made up of political and senior leads from each member community. This steering committee meets quarterly to report on the successes and challenges and drives the direction, decides on next steps taken, and chooses what new resources are developed for its members. Currently, BCSPI has 30 participating member organisations, and these communities range in size from larger cities to regional districts to smaller rural municipalities. Each member community has their own unique social challenges, and as I mentioned, the benefit of social procurement is that these policies and practices can be directly linked to strategic goals and social planning objectives, meaning that the additional social value these members are creating from their existing purchasing is going directly to the social issues they've identified as most important to address. The services in BCI are delivered by a team of social procurement, industry engagement, and community impact experts, with Bisocial Canada and Presentations Plus developing resources, coaching, and training, Scale Collaborative providing project management and coordination, and the Vancouver Island Construction Association leading the engagement and liaison with the construction sector. And BCSPI as a concept started back in 2016 when a group of local governments on Vancouver Island wanted to explore the creation of a shared social procurement learning hub. And in 2018, that working group received funding from the Island Coastal Economic Trust and the City of Victoria. And the initiative was launched in 2019 with 9 initial members. And then from 2019 to 2021, the initiative grew in size with over 20 additional members joining. And by June of this year, the BC government recognised social procurement and BCSPI as key economic recovery opportunities and provided the funding to expand across the province. In those first 2 years, the project trained over 150 member staff in social procurement practices and concepts. It realised over $200 million in spending with an added social value lens and helped steward over 50 social procurement pilot projects in BCSPI member communities. And this BCSPI member journey that we see here guides the community's progress from understanding the basic concepts of social procurement to full implementation and impact measurement. And as we follow the steps from 1 through 12 that we can see here, we can see that members move along from onboarding to planning their journey, where they identify social procurement outcomes through to training into pilot projects, where the BCSPI team provides coaching through the whole process, and then onto policy implementation. And when the member is in the full implementation phase, moving around the final circle you can see here, this is where social procurement is going into purchasing. Social value vendors in the community are building their capacity to respond and deliver on government contracts. and the social value outcomes that were decided upon at step 2 are being measured and reported on. And we see members remaining in the initiative for 2 to 3 years maximum as they work through this process. And importantly, BCSPI recognises governments have limited resources, and so some members are able to move more quickly through the process, where others need to take time and an approach that works best for them. The long-term goal is always for a member to take the learning forward into implementation to a point where they no longer require the support of BCSPI and continue to mobilise their spend to create additional community benefits for the foreseeable future. And BCSPI members get access to a whole host of resources to support their social procurement journey. These include best practice templates, guides, full online resource library of example RFPs and social procurement work from other members, as well as dedicated coaching support, a thriving community of practice where lessons learned, challenges, outcomes are shared, and supplier outreach, impact measurement, and communications tools. The coaching and consulting support available to BCSPI members comes from the team of social procurement experts and includes one-to-one coaching for member staff, initial project review, support on social criteria, language and weighting, policy development assistance, and more. And BCSPI works on both the buyer and supplier side to help members identify and connect with the social value suppliers and vendors in their communities, helping local social value suppliers recognise the opportunity to do business with government, but also to understand how to respond to and deliver on government contracts. We take a regional approach to impact measurement and have partnered with Royal Roads University to develop a region-wide impact measurement framework and guide to support BCSPI members in their measurement activities. The regional framework is aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And finally, joining BCSPI is easy, affordable, and impactful for your community. Our fee structure is population-based, meaning that all the resources, training, and support we've just discussed is available for an annual membership fee, the equivalent of which you would pay to your local area of government association. In the case of the District of Hewlett, this would be your annual AVICC dues. And our unique collaborative regional model ensures that communities are able to work together, share learning, successes, challenges, and opportunities in order to advance their social procurement journey. And of course, as we mentioned, social procurement can directly support your community strategic and social planning goals. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. And we'll open up for questions.
Okay, open up to the councillors. Any questions from any councillors? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you. You were saying that the cost for community is the same as our AVICC. Is that what you mean? Okay. Okay. And then what is the time commitment if you're looking at a community our size? What is the time commitment for our staff to see this through? Have you seen from different communities?
Rob, did you want to answer that, and then I could fill in?
Certainly. As I said, when we look at the member journey, we meet members where they're at. And so we really look at what your existing resources are, and we'll find a plan that works for the member community at the start of that journey. Essentially saying that, what kind of staff commitment do you have? Where would you like to look? What's going to be doable? We do have those quarterly steering committee meetings where we would ask normally that a political lead would attend, and that guides the whole project. But on an individual basis, normally we look for at least one staff lead in the organisation to kind of lead on this. Oftentimes that's kind of CAO, CFO level, or a purchasing lead.
Yeah, and if I may, the only other comment I would add, thank you, Rob, is that it also is dependent on that member journey of what type of training staff are taking, if they are engaged in a community of practice with other procurement individuals. It really is self-directed. And so in addition to the quarterly meetings, it really would be to build capacity within staff. And again, that could be taken at whatever pace was appropriate for your staff at that point in time.
Thanks, guys. So the funding was given from ICE-T. Great. We love ICE-T. They're amazing. So was that for starting a startup? So to sustain yourselves, is it through memberships? Is that how you're sustaining yourself?
It's a combination. Rob, do you want to give the percentage of the funding model?
The funding works in that, yes, that was originally kind of like seed funding from the City of Victoria and ICE-T for the first 2 years. And then the province has provided us with a one-time grant for the next 2 years. And then we hope to use a combination of that and membership fees to push that into the third year. But the bulk of the funding right now is coming from the government of British Columbia.
Any other questions? Well, you've given us lots to think about. I know this is something that I believe Minister Osborne was one of the big pushes
Yes.
back in 2016 on this one.
She was, definitely. Yeah.
Great. I don't think we have any big decisions here today, but I know that you're definitely reachable, and our staff will get in touch, and we'll see what we can do together.
Sounds great. And the only other opportunity I would suggest, Rob, would be your point person for any follow-up. But we're certainly open to, if there was interest, to view the website or view some of the resources. That could be through Rob. But also if you wanted to talk to either any other elected officials that are members, or if your staff wanted to speak to someone that's a member at a staff level, we're certainly able to facilitate that kind of opportunity as well.
I appreciate that. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much.
You have a great afternoon. Thanks for your time.
You too. You bet. Bye now.
Thanks so much. Please do reach out with any questions.
We certainly will. Okay, moving into reports. Request for 4 temporary use permits for rooming housing use at 1259 Eber, 1241 Eber, 277 Otter, and 1330 Helen Road. Sounds like you're cleaning something up. Welcome, Mr. Gregg.
Thank you. Through the mayor. This is multiple temporary use permits submitted by Pacific Rim National Park Reserve for rooming house use, as it's called, at 4 of their properties. And I just suggest, it's noted in the report, all 4 of the properties are currently zoned R1 single-family residential. They're fairly indistinguishable from other single-family homes in the neighborhood. The intent is to rent them out to separate occupants. It's either 3 or 4 parks staff would be living in these homes. And so that kind of use where it's not roommates with one lease, but it's individual leases essentially, that falls under the definition of what's a rooming house. They are being proactive about this. As noted towards the back of the report, it's quite likely that the rooming house use is already occurring elsewhere within the community. We're pretty sure. We know it. We see them, and we've heard from other businesses that have that use. And as priorities permit, those sort of occurrences should be identified and brought into compliance. These 4 temporary use permits that are being submitted by Parks Canada, this is being done. They're being proactive about this, but also they should be looked at individually. That part of the temporary use permit, just in the process-wise, the legislation requires we give notification, which has been done. This would also be an opportunity for council to provide an opportunity for the public members or neighbors who wish to speak to each of these permits. So we should offer that, whether there's anyone on Zoom or otherwise who wishes to speak to these. Other than that, I'll see just if there's any questions.
Do you want to ask a question? Yeah.
Thank you, through the mayor, to staff. These are owned by Parks Canada, is that correct? These are Parks houses.
Correct.
So 7 years ago, Parks Canada came to us and announced that they were divesting their houses. They were going to divest 2 a year, and they did divest maybe 4 of them. Mm-hmm. So do you know what their intention is with these? Are they holding on to them, or are they going to divest them?
Through the mayor, we haven't had any official sort of word or application or seen anything around that, but we've heard that given the housing needs, they reassessed that. We had seen, and yes, I was aware that some homes had been divested, but that as far as we understand that they are actually investing in some of the upgrade on these homes and is intending to use them because they need them for their own staff. And so I think also that this temporary use permit really is, maximum is 3 years. If this is going to be ongoing, one of the things we've discussed with park staff is whether it's a zoning amendment to recognize these properties if it's an ongoing thing. That's something that we're still exploring with them.
So just a follow-up to that, you said that they are going to do some upgrades to these houses?
Through the mayor, just anecdotally, we've noticed that they have been making upgrades to some of the houses. Not all appear to have received that yet, but that was an indication because, as council may be aware, that there was some lesser level of repair in the past. It appears that with this approach of they seem to be more in it for the long haul, just both in the maintenance of the grounds and the buildings.
That's great. Any upgrades would be appreciated. These 4 properties are right in my neighborhood, as they are yours, and they do stick out like sore thumbs. So any upgrades would be very much encouraged.
Councillor Cole?
My comments were just going to surround about how much leverage we had to try to see some sort of facelifts, and some are pretty rough. That was it.
Any other questions? Okay, well, following process here. Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Opportunity for the public to make any comments. Am I to ask these individually by address? Okay, so are there any members of the public that wish to make any comments regarding 1259 Eber Road?
There are no hands raised at this time.
And any members of the public that wish to make any comments regarding 1241 Eber Road?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Any members of the public that wish to comment on 277 Otter Street?
There are no hands raised.
And lastly, any members of the public that wish to comment on 1313 Helen Road?
There are no hands raised on Zoom, and we also have not received any emails via community input.
Thank you. And would the applicant like to speak to their temporary use permit?
I do not have anybody waiting to speak.
Okay. Moving along. Yes, we have to do that. Okay, are there any further comments from council? Okay, and there are a couple recommendations. Would someone like to move them?
I'll do it. Separately, I assume.
Please.
Mr. Rotenberg. I'm moving that council authorize the issuance of temporary use permit 21-02 to allow for a rooming house use for 4 Pacific Rim National Park Reserve employees for a period of up to 3 years at 1259 Eber Road, Lot 12, Section 21, Clayoquot District Plan 13683.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Move that council authorize the issuance of temporary use permit 21-03 to allow for a rooming house use for 4 Pacific Rim National Park Reserve employees for a period of up to 3 years at 1241 Eber Road, Lot 11, Section 21, Clayoquot District Plan 13683.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move that council authorize the issuance of temporary use permit 21-04 to allow for a rooming house use for 3 Pacific Rim National Park Reserve employees for a period of up to 3 years at 277 Otter Street, Lot 8, Section 21, Clayoquot District Plan 11923.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And I move that council authorize the issuance of temporary use permit 21-05 to allow for a rooming house use for 3 Pacific Rim National Park Reserve employees for a period of up to 3 years at 1313 Helen Road, Lot 10, Block 1, Section 21, Clayoquot District Plan 9200.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Okay, 10.3. This report provided by the Director of Community Planning is regarding temporary use permit 21-18 210 Matano Road. There will be an opportunity for the public input following the presentation. Welcome, Mr. Gregg. Perhaps you give us a brief summary.
Certainly, thank you. This application is essentially for adding 2 seasonal RV camping spaces for local workers on the property at 210 Monado Road. The property is zoned for a maximum of 6 guest rooms plus 4 guest cabins under the guest house zoning. It's a fairly large property, and currently it has no guest rooms in the main house and just 2 guest cabins on the property. They do plan, the owners plan, to eventually construct 2 more guest cabins, which the zoning would allow. At this point, they're proposing to service where those locations would be, make them available to local workers on a seasonal basis for hooking up with an RV to have some short-term housing, and that with the idea that down the road when they're ready, that those locations would be the future guest cabin sites. So they're giving some thought to where they would want those locations to be. As I said, it's a large, over 3 acres, the property. So we see there's certainly ample room for parking and little chance for impact on neighbors, there being none. So notification has been given. This is a temporary use permit. It's required. So this is also a chance to provide the public with an opportunity to speak if they wish to address this. I just ask if there's any questions.
Any questions from council? Okay. We'll go right to the members of public. Are there any members of public that wish to speak to 210 Matana Road?
There are no hands raised at this time.
And no emails? I'm assuming the applicant's not here for to speak to the application. Fair to say?
I just had a hand raised. Mr. Mark Fortune
Okay.
is on the line.
Thank you very much through the mayor for considering our application for this temporary housing project. It's sorely needed within the community, and we look forward to moving this project forward with your consent.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fortune. Any additional comments or questions from council? Okay, we have a couple recommendations. A recommendation?
I will move that council authorize the issuance of temporary use permit 21-18 for a period of 3 years to allow 2 seasonal RV camping spaces for local workers.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Yeah, well, there you go. That was legally anyways. They were housed there. This is not legal. Okay, moving along. Community Resiliency Investment Program. Welcome, Chief.
Mayor and Council. So today, seeking council support for our application for the Ebcn Community Resiliency Investment Program. And what it is, it's a stream of funding provided to communities and local governments that help support those who engage in Fire Smart principles. So Fire Smart is a framework for living with managing with wildfire based on the 7 disciplines as listed below there. Education, vegetation management, emergency planning, cross-training, interagency cooperation, legislation planning, and development considerations. Specifically, what the district is applying for would be to have a community wildfire resiliency plan developed, which is a big part of our emergency plan that, to my knowledge, has never been developed for the community. So the value of that is approximately $30,000. It also provide for cross-training of the local firefighters through some mandatory wildfire training, And it would also allow for some funding for community engagement to introduce fire smart principles to members of the community. I've seen firsthand in my wildfire experience, and saw it again this summer, the difference that fire smart principles can make to communities. Granted, I'm working in a lot of different climates, and I understand that than what we have here in Ucluelet, but I think it is time we start considering fire smart principles. I'll gladly field any questions.
Not really a question, but a comment. I like the fact that they're offering up to $50,000, and you've come up with a request for $47,350. That's really great.
The Mayor, thank you.
Any questions from council? There's a recommendation here.
I'm happy to move that, and I just want to say, Chief, that I think this is a great idea, especially after this past summer when we were on fire ban, which is not something that we're used to out here on the coast. So it's going to get hotter and it's going to get drier. So I will move that Council supports the activities outlined in the District of Ucluelet 2021 grant application to the UBCM Community Resiliency Investment Program, Fire Smart Community Funding and Supports 2021. Can I do them together?
Yeah, please.
And that Council will provide overall grant management of the UBCM Community Resiliency Investment Program, Fire Smart Community Funding and Supports 2022.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Well, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to see what that looks like on the ground. Is there a timeline for that? If successful, I guess.
The announcements generally happen, I believe, early in the new year, so it would be most likely springtime when we'd be looking at instituting some of these.
You have a high probability of success in your grant, so we're counting on
I
you.
do,
Right?
so I'm hoping to continue that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, the next report, Signature Circle. This report is provided by the Director of Engineering, is regarding Signature Circle utilities, recommissioning, cost estimate. Mr. McIntosh, welcome.
Afternoon. So, Mr. Mayor, may I present to you and Council just exactly that, a brief report about recommissioning utility services at Phase 1 Signature Circle. So the recommendation at the top of this report is asking to direct staff for $70,000 to recommission site services, including water, fire, storm, and streetlights at the Phase 1 Signature Circle redevelopment. A little bit of background on this. In July of 2012, the district accepted commissioning to bring services alive at that property. So building facilities and commissioning hydro, storm, sewer, water, and turning on the streetlights. That same year, 2012, when the Windasa development stalled, Council decided to decommission those services. And so at that time, all of those services were, lines were drained, pumps were removed, streetlights were never turned on, and then a barricade was put on Florence Drive, to stop traffic into that area. We are now 9-10 years later. Beyond that time, those utility services have sat safe and isolated for that time, for 10 years. And this year, new developer, Ani Development, requested that those utility services be recommissioned by September of 2021, so this year. This year as well, in April of 2021, Council received a report from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure advising Council that a traffic impact study and some road work had to happen on Valencia Drive in order to open up that road to public. So at the time of this report, district staff, we aren't absolutely certain of when utility services will be required at that site. However, we're anticipating that the developer will have those constraints removed perhaps in 2022. So what we're requesting here today is for those funds to be allocated into the 2022 budget. Again, about $70,000, and that's to allocate the funds to recommission water, sewer, storm, and then turn the lights on. I'll pause for any questions.
Thank you. Through the mayor to staff, we turned down this exact request from the ONI group earlier this year. So has something changed now, or have they come forward with a new development proposal, or what's changed since we last turned this down?
Yeah, Mr. Gray, if you want to just clarify we didn't turn this down, but we can give you what we did. Well,
Through the mayor, and I'm just jumping in because this happened, and Mr. McIntosh is new to this particular game, or this file. There were a couple of things that council had been presented with earlier in the year. One was a request to open the road. The other one was also around the servicing. And the motions that council passed with our suggestion was to look into the servicing. That the district had, as you'll recall, accepted those services, and they were fully commissioned at one point in the past. Essentially, they are existing municipal services that had been mothballed while the property sat vacant. So our recommendation was that we had a responsibility to look into this, which is this is the follow-up. That now with the added capacity and the knowledge in our operations and engineering side, we now have a clear picture of what it would take to turn it on, and really the timing, as I think Mr. McIntosh's report reflects, is going to depend on other works that the developer will need to work in, and particularly in conjunction with the Ministry of Transportation around the intersection. Does that help put it in context?
Yes, thank you. So this is just preparing for what may be inevitable.
One day, whether the current or future owner gets to a point of, okay, we're ready to, use those services and have met all their requirements, well, then at some point, the district needs to be ready to sort of turn on those services, and this essentially just sort of quantifies how much work and what would it cost.
Great, thank you for clarifying.
any other questions, Councilor Horn?
I'm not sure if this is an answerable question, but I'm just wondering how much deterioration happens to these sorts of things over 10 years. I understand, obviously, the generators and things, the pump from the pumps, that those things have to be replaced. But I'm just wondering, this is just my ignorance. I don't know what the lifespan is of water and sewer systems and lights that have been sitting not on.
Through the mayor. Part of the quotation that you have in front of you today, these line items include running cameras through the lines to assess if there is any damage while sitting, as well as doing some upgrades to the generator that has been there sitting as well. And that'll give district staff an understanding of just what that deterioration has been over the 10 years. We are anticipating that, as you mentioned, 10 years will have some sort of impact, but until we're through that, we don't know exactly what that will look like.
Okay, so the numbers are a ballpark for dealing with that. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. McIntosh? No? Okay, well, thank you. And thank you for the thorough report.
Yes. Thank you, James. I'll move that council direct staff to allocate $69,496 for the recommissioning of site services, including water, sewer, streetlights, and fire for the Phase 1 Signature Circle development within the 2022 operational budget.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Okay, this report is provided by the Manager of Corporate Services is regarding our 2022 council meeting schedule. Mr. Roenberg, you want to give us a brief summary?
Through the mayor? Yes, we're here already. We're already looking at 2022.
Let's have the champagne.
This is a very similar schedule to what you've seen in previous years. As it says in the report, generally meetings are on Tuesdays at 3:30. When they're not on Tuesdays, it's because we have a conflict with court services, which also uses this room. In previous years, we've had. Let me review that. In previous years, we've had 3 committee of the wholes, or exactly 3 committee of the wholes. This year, what we're suggesting is that there be 2 committee of the wholes. The first would be to hear grant and aid. The second would be your standard societies meeting. And then it would be up to the next council to determine how they would like to use those regular committee of the wholes. We're taking a similar approach with the Harbor Authority. We're suggesting 3 here for this year, and then for the council to decide exactly how they want to schedule those Harbor Authority meetings. Those are the only major changes we're looking for here. We're also looking for basically for council to adopt this particular schedule and then to direct us to give notice accordingly. Can I answer any questions?
Councilor McEwen?
Not really a question, but just a comment. I quickly looked up the 4 conferences that we typically attend, and it looks like this particular schedule will accommodate all 4 of those conferences. So thank you very much to staff for that.
Perfect.
Councillor Cole, just wondering how this is affected by your schedule.
Yeah, it is the 12 of the 26 or 24 of them, or 26
Half
of
of
them. Half of them. I am still working until 1600, so it does propose a significant challenge. There's nothing I can do about it.
Well, I think it's, well, that's the thing here. So is there an appetite to move it to 4 o'clock?
Well, that would solve my.
As long as we finish, it'll be done by 7. No, because at the end of the day, we started this afternoon thing. This started at 2 o'clock, and that we've transitioned due to work schedules. I think for all of us, having all 5 of us here, not one person flying in 20 minutes afterwards. I'm quite fine moving this to a 4 o'clock starting, if that's going to make your life easy.
That would solve my conflict, 100%.
So in order to do that, what I suggest you do now is you make a motion to amend the schedule for the meetings to start at 4 o'clock, and then make a motion to adopt the schedule as amended, and then the second motion listed here would stay exactly the same. So one new motion, which says all meetings starting at 4 o'clock, and then as amended. And then.
Okay, so.
Do you want me to try to make that? Yeah. Okay. I would make the motion that council adopt the schedule proposed amended with a 4 p.m. start time. And what was the other one, Joey? Sorry.
So let's start with a motion to amend the schedule.
Motion to amend the schedule to 1600.
Yep. Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Easy.
And then I don't go to the second one yet. I have to do something else first, Joey.
No, go to the second one and say motion to, or it would be appropriate in this part to adopt as amended.
And that council direct staff to.
It's the first one, but it's
amended. Okay. That council adopt the amended.
Yes.
Council meeting schedule.
2022 council meeting schedule as yes, as amended. Got
Second.
It. Second for that. All in favor?
And that council direct staff to give notice of the 2022 council meeting schedule in accordance to the community charter.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thanks,
Easy
guys.
peasy. That's good. No, it's good. It's. Yeah, no. It's okay.
Through the
I know
mayor.
we had it good there for afternoons for staff there, but I'm sorry, we're getting back. I think it's a good decision. Okay, this report provided by the manager of corporate services regarding the District of Ucluelet staff and contractor housing. Welcome back, sir.
Staff have found that housing is an issue on a temporary basis for both staff and for contractors. we engaged for the rental of Unit 4, 313 Forbes Road, for a period now of 1 year. That space has been used for about 6 months, give or take, primarily to house our previous CAO. At that point, we did not have a policy in place regarding how we were going to use this particular space and how we would use other spaces, either owned or rented by the district to staff or to contractors. What we're proposing today is a policy that would apply to properties owned by district and rented to staff, or rented by district and rented to staff. We believe that the policy itself will create some transparency about how this all works. It also creates a priority list for the CAO to be able to consider, and it delegates the CAO the authority to make these decisions about how to rent. The other thing we're looking for is direction whether we should renegotiate or attempt to extend this lease agreement, which we currently have for the property I just mentioned, which is Unit 4, 313 Forbes Road. Those are the two directions we're looking for today. Council, of course, has options. If there were any changes that you would like to see to this policy, it would be a great time to let us know and adopt a motion telling us how you'd like us to change the policy. We'd redraft, bring it back for your consideration again. And of course, Council could direct us not to attempt to extend this lease agreement. Are there any questions I can answer?
Any questions? Councillor Keogh?
Thank you. Through the mayor to staff. I'm a little unclear about rent. It looked like we aren't charging the tenants rent, but then a little later on it says rent will be determined on a cost recovery basis. So the people that we are housing in that unit, are we actually charging them rent?
To date, what we've done is the contractors that we've housed to date, there was an offset in their agreement, which means that they were not charged rent on that agreement because rent was provided as part of our contract to them.
Oh, I see. But I do see part of the new policy. It states that the tenant will be responsible for all cleaning service costs.
Yes.
Thank you.
Through the mayor. So I just had sort of a comment in that you've said that we used it basically half the time, 6 months of the year. I think it would be imperative, because we probably need it for those 6 months. I would just hate to see us sitting on something that could be used for housing in the community outside of us sitting with something vacant. So I guess just to make sure we're maximizing it for contractor purposes as part of the deal, and just making sure we're making good use of the space and not sitting on it empty. That's all.
Of course, there's always the challenge of needing a landing place.
Yeah.
So we do our best to make sure that the space is filled, but we do anticipate that there could be vacancies from time to time.
Any other comments, concerns? Okay, please do.
I will move recommendation 1 that council adopt the District of Ucluelet staff housing policy as presented.
I'll second it.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And I will move that council direct staff to pursue extending the district's residential tenancy agreement with Breaker Developments Ltd. for the rental of Unit 4, 313 Forbes Road, Ucluelet, BC, for the period of 1 year.
By Councillor Cole. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, well, thank you for that. Checklist. Any questions? Okay, moving on to legislation. Oh, here's a deep and heavy one. The first report provided by the Director of Community Planning is regarding the OCP. Mr. Gregg.
Thank you, through the mayor. Light and
easy, I think, is more.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No
I'll just
elevator music, please.
Maybe ask for the slides to be turned on here. Okay, I understand. Also, we have a new magic wand here for advancing the slides, but or it doesn't appear to have an on switch. So getting a laser.
It should just advance with the arrow right button.
Look at that. I'm jinxed when it comes to these things, as you'll know. So essentially, this is a timeline which we've updated. There's this, the OCP update has been in the works for a while. Last in May, earlier this year, Council held a public hearing and then provided some direction to staff on edits that were desired. So that's sort of the first piece of this. The staff report that is on your agenda today, it sort of covers really three things in which we're seeking some direction on the edits of the current draft, which we're now calling Draft 7.2, which includes the changes that were made in response to the public hearing and Council's direction. Also a question about whether some further analysis of growth scenarios is something that's desired, and then also present some options for next steps and whether or not additional public engagement is also part of the picture. So I'll just briefly go through those three things. First, so the edits to the draft OCP, this slide, and I'm going to slide around so I can see the screen that you're looking at as well. This slide shows where a lot of the mapping edits kind of center. This is part of Schedule C, which is the Parks and Open Space and Trails Plan. Essentially, there was a desire to remove some trails that were sort of future potential trails that caused some angst among property owners and feedback to council. So what you'll see here is that there was along Spring Cove, there had been a trail that's now been removed in front of what was the former BC Packers and the Nakagawa property, as well as the Komodos on the end of the peninsula. At the north end of Little Beach, there had been a trail that was shown connecting up to Marine Drive. Those have all been removed from the plan as well. There was a potential trail shown onto the island that's out in front of what is down at the sort of foot of right by the Komodo Park. And I need to speak louder apparently. And so those have been removed from the plan as well. There has also been added a policy, the 7.2A, which in general terms speaks to that still hope for one day connecting a trail if and when development happens at that north end of Little Beach. Still, it would be recommended to have a policy, just a signal to consider at that time connecting a trail, particularly if it can follow as it refers to, there's a riparian corridor near there. If the trail could follow along that, it would be sort of a natural way and quite a beautiful one to get up to the Wild Pacific Trail as it parallels Marine Drive. Let's pause and see if there's any questions about any
of that. The trail behind the Pacific Rim Motel, was that removed as well?
Trail behind the Pacific Rim Motel. No, there wasn't direction on that. That was and that belongs within the sort of the village square circulation, the pedestrian circulation. Is shown in the 2011 OCP as well. And so that was a piece that had been shown in the development permit guidelines for the village square area of if those properties redevelop or break up, having sort of a mid-block connection through there is shown in the current OCP, and that's why it was sort of brought forward. We haven't made changes to that. It's still shown in this draft 7.2.
Yeah, I believe we asked for that to be edited out, that one.
There was no council motion to that effect. So.
Didn't we do that?
Thank you through the mayor to staff. Just confirming that that dotted line from Little Beach up to Marine Drive, that's gone from Mr. Larson's property?
There is no dotted red line crossing Mr. Larson's property at the north end of Little Beach.
I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
And I would just so this is the all of Schedule C, the parks map, sort of zoomed out from that portion. The edits really were within this area down around Little Beach and Spring Cove. So yes, the pedestrian connection, that kind of mid-block, is still shown roughly in that area. So it is still on the plan. The other, let's see, the only other piece or edit that is in this draft 7.2, this is the long-range land use plan, and one which was, I'll just highlight it here, that discussion from the BC Packers Ken Fisco site, as you'll recall in their letter, they objected to having the trail go through there, and also indicated that their long-range plans are to continue to use it as it is for some marine industrial uses. As we're focusing on that, we realized that had been shown, it reflected the old OCP showing it as residential. So this is currently it's now shown as light industrial, like the other marine industrial properties in town, to reflect its current use, and we've made them aware of this. So that really is the edits to the OCP, both in text and in map form. The other issue that we sort of raised, and it is a matter of sort of time and what the council and community discussions have been, is really around growth and development and the overall pace and location of future growth. That has been raised in discussions around individual developments. And so really what's suggesting is that potentially we could look at sort of the first step of exploring how much growth the community supports in the context of an OCP. Remember, it's looking out 30 years into the future. This page, so really if you look at page 261 or 261, 263 of your agenda, have two areas of policy that exist in the OCP. And this is unchanged from the previous draft, and so it is in this draft 7.2, that really note some future and ongoing work, including really a local and regional look at growth. So there's policies in the OCP that's been drafted to work with our neighbors in the ACRD and Ucluelet and Tofino and on the West Coast to say, okay, what does build-out look like on the West Coast, and to work with them. What's being suggested is it's possible. Also, time-wise, since Council gave second reading to the OCP, we've had the results of the West Coast, that regional look at the land use demand study. And so we're really asking to see if Council, if there's an appetite for looking briefly at the implications of growth and what different scenarios would be. And I can speak to that very briefly here. So in the OCP, this is draft map 7. It's in the OCP, and it shows a snapshot of really what is the current land use in town. And the white space really is the vacant and underutilized lands, and some of them are sort of within what we'd think of as sort of the developed portion of town, and then we have lands to the north. The land use demand study, it's a study. It includes projections of growth for the whole West Coast that looked at kind of the permanent households, second homes, tourist accommodation, commercial uses in this sort of low, medium, and high scenarios. They also looked at, in that study, the inventory of vacant and underutilized lands and what could be built over time, but also the infrastructure. So that is, you may have recalled, that's 152 pages of data in that study. But it looked in some detail at, and this is reflecting the polygons of what are the land uses in our OCP as it's drafted. And they were looking at what would the servicing be required, and also they did an analysis of the costs. So that information, if Council wishes, we could explore how those sort of low, medium, high growth scenarios could translate into the land use plan. And really the value, part of the value of that is really checking in to see and trying to get it to match what the community expectation really is over this kind of 30-year horizon that we're trying to look out into the future. And the importance of that, both so the community has a clear expectation, and council does as well, but also for the infrastructure planning, because we want that to be based on what are the land uses that we're trying to provide the services for. So we don't want to get too far ahead of those land uses and have infrastructure that's sitting it's unfunded and not being paid for, nor do you want to fall behind and have development get to a point where it's being held up or hung up on the lack of services, because as you appreciate, and it takes time to develop water and sewer and road capacity. So really that's sort of the question. And sort of to get back to the staff report and the three things that we're really looking for is, one is I guess the question of whether the edits in the draft 7.2 are okay, and is there an appetite for looking at sort of and I'd have to say it's sort of a quick and dirty analysis is what we're talking about. Not, we are cognizant of the time frame that this has been taking, and not wanting to delay it overly. We're not suggesting putting money in next year's budget for hiring a consultant and doing all of this. It really would be a quick exercise of taking the information we have now out of the land use study and other sources, and really sort of saying, okay, here's what it might look like, and as a starting point for discussion. And then the third one, the question is really about timing and process. So in the recommendations, there are some alternatives there, and one of the questions is whether additional public input is required or whether council is comfortable with moving this forward and to a public hearing. And that point, I think maybe I'll pause and see if there's any questions. I imagine there are.
Less a question than a statement. I do think that I would really like to see a quick and dirty analysis of growth potential. I think it's important. It came up time and time again in the public hearings. So if we can include some of the information that we've got from the land use demand study and get that in, I think it would be very worthwhile.
You got a bunch of head nods. Yeah, okay.
No, and I appreciate the steps that you included in that. It was good, but I would really support to see a quick and dirty.
What are we comparing that to? So we're going to get, at the end of the day, we're going to get some. I think it's good information. So, so I think about the community the last time. I think it was the 1990. There was OCP done, and half this town didn't exist, but they seemed like they did a lot of good things with the concepts, right? So, and I don't think I've shared this with the group. I think it would be neat to, because this is going to go on for a while. This is going to close up tomorrow, this OCP conversation. But as we get the request that Councillor Horge has made, which I think is really important information about here's what 50 more homes a year looks like for you, Cluent, and for the area. But I would like to canvass some of the people that had done OCPs for us in the past and actually go, hey, you participated in this 30 years ago, and what do you think has gone? We're trying to get a view from council here. We're also getting most of the view of the people that are participating in the OCP see a red line near their property. So they're the ones that are speaking here, and why we're backtracking a little bit. But I think chime in that, that 30,000 foot level that we're trying to get, and it's hard for me to do that because, these OCPs that have come before us have had a purpose. And if you read some of them, there's some great ideas in there, but I think it's almost getting clouded and lost in some.
So you're saying you'd like to see where they were coming from, where their point of view at the time was coming from?
Yeah, and I think I'm going to reach out to that. I don't know how that's going to shape up, but I think I would like to. There's some working groups. I know Judy Gray brings it up all the time, but when you read some of those OCPs with the 12 people that participated in them, they were a well-rounded group of people. All from 20-year-olds to I guess 50-year-olds, our age group. But and I think that to see what they thought had changed in there, because the reality growth is coming. I don't think the community. How prepared do you get for what town could look like in 50 years? Because you need a big treatment plant. But again, oh man, I'm rambling a little bit. But yeah, it is a big topic. But I'd like to get some people that were in these chairs that participated in OCPs to find out what got missed or what they see duplicated. Go ahead.
So other community members?
So, thank you. If we are having another committee of the whole meeting, those people could be invited to that.
Yeah, and I'll make sure of that. I just I've thought about it a couple times, and I just need to make sure that they do participate and give them an opportunity to speak about what it looked like for them 30 years ago and going forward.
I think that big redo of the OCP was 98. It was shortly after we moved here, and there were working groups in schools, at Forest Glen. There were working groups all over the place for months on that remake. And so, yeah, it would be good to get their opinion on.
Yeah, I think that'd be critical. That would make me feel a bit more comfortable going forward. So, outside of that, Mr. Gregg, I know that you probably have one of this document on your nightstand. I appreciate the work that you've done. It's really, really good. And I think it gets lost in translation because we have a very small audience that we're trying to accommodate about red lines, because it's more than just where the red lines are going. It's about where we're going, and there's been a lot of good work that's been done in the community, and I think this OCP will hopefully piggyback that good work.
So you're seeing it as going forward towards another committee of the whole before it goes back to public hearing.
I think it's important.
Yeah,
I
I totally agree. I think we
Let's
need
just
to.
and it'd be nice to have some people that are willing to engage rather than trying to protect their little corner of their neighborhood and trying to get it at a bit, okay, what do we like? And I think what the document has is a lot of great things. I think it's everything that I'm looking for with, and I think it's just trying to get the last few participants and move on.
So the second recommendation actually suits that need, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Well, I can move them. You want me?
Okay.
I'll move that staff be directed to provide an analysis of growth options informed by the 2021 West Coast Land Use Demand Study in the context of Draft OCP. And
Second.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I didn't think there was going to be a debate on that. It's all good.
And that the draft OCP, along with the growth options, be presented for community feedback at the committee of the whole meeting with your special peeps invited.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Holy man.
Thank you.
So what, we're probably another 4 or 6 months away? He's getting close.
There is a timeline that's in the report there that will, when we say quick, our intention is to turn this around quickly, so it's not drawn out.
Yeah. I think last Christmas he was dropping off presents of what the draft OCP got. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we're getting close. Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah, there's good There's good info in there. Okay. Sorry, right here. So 11 point, proposed amendment to district of closed single-use item regulation bylaw. Okay, Manager Corporate Services. Welcome.
Through the mayor. As council knows, they received a delegation from Surfrider Pacific Rim at the last council meeting. At that point, Surfrider was lobbying for some amendments to our single-use plastic bylaw. In terms of a little bit of background, our single-use plastic item bylaw was adopted subject to ministerial approval. So we had to get ministerial approval before we adopted. Things have changed. The community charter has been amended slightly to add several items to which allows council to regulate spheres of authority which used to be shared or which are continued to be shared by the Ministry of Environment. Now council can go ahead and regulate these very specific areas. Some of those areas are what we already regulate through our single-use plastic bylaw. Another way of saying that is if we had have adopted that bylaw now, we would not need ministerial approval. But now those areas of authority have broadened, and they've broadened to include stir sticks and plastic utensils. utensils. We're working with the ministry right now to clarify exactly how they want us to regulate those and what the outer limits of those are. So what we're looking for today is a little bit of council discussion and direction regarding whether you would like us to continue down this path or not. So that's what we're looking for today. If you can, this motion as it's drafted right now is basically saying, Joey, look into these particular amendments and come back to us with those amendments as a draft bylaw for you to consider.
Any questions? Comments? Okay.
Well, there is too much plastic cutlery on the beach, just saying. That's my comment.
So that's so those if they're okay, that's perfect.
Okay. I will move that council direct staff to present amendments to District of Ucluelet single-use item regulation bylaw number 1266/2020 that regulate the provision of plastic and bioplastic utensils and stir sticks.
Thank you. Any further discussion? What was that? No.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. The third report is provided by Parks and Rec regarding District of Ucluelet Harbor Amendment Bylaw number 1296. Looking for adoption.
I'll move that council adopt District of Ucluelet Harbor Regulation Amendment Bylaw number 1296/2021.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Correspondence, we have one. Our sidewalk person, Councillor Hoare.
I asked that this be on our agenda actually because I think, you know, it shows support, and I would like to see it done for next year if we can. I mean, because I know that obviously we didn't get it done for the Day of Truth and Reconciliation, and I have to say, having, you know, stood in line to see that amazing exhibit at the school, yeah, I feel like being overt about things is sometimes a good thing, and we support our local First Nations, and we could talk to them too. And the other thing I don't know is where we could do it, because Ministry of Transport, I suspect, controls the sidewalk designs along most of Peninsula, but what I don't know is the one at the top of Main Street, because that would be a major intersection, and it might not be MOTI controlled, but I'm not sure.
Well, I think the first one, I think everyone's very supportive. I think it's great, and so why don't we just push this off as a budget item? Make a motion to push this off towards our budget, which is around the corner.
Yep.
And then we'll wait for staff to bring back something at that point. So you want to make that motion?
I will move that we look into implementing this sidewalk design, buy some orange paint, in the 2022 budget.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Councillor Hoare, for bringing that to our attention, and that's a great one. Because Courtney was the one that was the big push for the ones in school, right?
Yeah, the rainbows.
Yeah, that was through you again, or was that? Okay. Man, whoever painted those did a good job. They haven't been repainted. They're still.
Yeah, they had to be
Okay,
repainted
okay.
once because
That's good.
they had to get the right paint because we have rain.
A little bit. Okay, we have 6 information items on the agenda today. Does anybody like to bring any out for discussion? Councillor, go ahead, Councillor McEwen. I know the one Councillor Cole wants to talk about.
Thank you. 14.1, the Tofino Ucluelet Transportation Service. I'm just wondering if Councillor Cole knows why they want to do the maintenance of the buses in Port Alberni when we have several places here that could do that maintenance?
Yeah, so they looked into it, and there's actually no one able to accommodate in Tofino or Ucluelet, able to accommodate that maintenance and storage of what they need. So that will be being done. They did try, and so that's a no-go. That's why it's in Port Alberni. They did attempt that here first.
Okay, great. Thanks for that information.
You bet. That was at the West Coast. This came October 6th was the West Coast Committee meeting. So I asked if we could have it here as well. There were a couple funny things that came up, and just that first they have to go through this almost, I guess, like their budgeting process, and that it would have to be awarded that those funds were going to, and I said, well, what happens if that doesn't happen? But it will happen, because the other places most of the places that are on the list to get a certain amount of the backing for this project already have existing projects. So people without transit are at the top of the list. So there's nothing to worry about here. All is good and well. And the timeline, you can see the timelines are all still on there.
And the intention of this would be new buses, not old buses from Vancouver being shipped to the West Coast, is my assumption?
The buses themselves, you can see the picture there. I can't tell you if they're
Trying to
going
figure out
to
where
be,
they are.
You know, I don't know. I'm used to the one who gets the ambulance
Yeah, I was
with
gonna
hundreds
say
of
that, yeah,
thousands.
yeah.
Well, you know, there was talk about will it have racks for surfboards, and all along it was said no, that this wasn't about transporting surfers, you know, people for surfing. But then that sort of, it seemed like maybe that might still be an option, but I don't think so. But it did come up again. And yeah, that was it. It's coming. It seems like it was a long ways away, but it is.
No, it's unbelievable that it's before us like that, and I think it's great. Yeah, no, it's wonderful. Councillor Hoare?
Just a comment. You may or may not have the answer, Councillor Cole. It looks like the front of the bus they've got in their image has one of the bike racks that I've certainly seen on the city buses. So that is a plan?
Yes. That image and that so that was the thing, carrying bikes, but can't you carry surfboards also? That's where it came from.
That's great, and I'm quite happy to see that with 2 scheduled stops a day in Hatatsu as well, which is huge.
Big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal. So awesome.
I would like to address the letter that we have there. No, I lost it. From the BC Ambulance paramedics. They sent a nice little letter offering to come out or to chat with us, and I think we should ask them to have a little delegation and come to talk to us about how they see things are going. I know that we heard from the employer
Right, got it.
Prior to the SOC coming into place. Now that the staffing model's been up and running for a few months, everybody's well into it, and it seems that from what I understand from a town hall meeting that I couldn't make, but that the employer and the union are recognizing all the same things. So I think it would just be different faces, but they're all on the same page currently. So if we could ask them to delegate, that would be great. I'd like to make a motion that we request a delegation from the ambulance paramedics of British Columbia.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor McEwen?
It's more of a question. 14.2, they're inviting us to an online open house. This is the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust. And I'm just wondering, it doesn't say the date. Does anybody know what that date is?
I do remember seeing that. I think I have that in my calendar, but I could get back to everybody about that. I can't remember when that date
Or
was.
if you could click on that link, it's page 349. If you click on the link that says register, then it'll probably tell you the date. I'm just curious.
I'm seeing that you're learning to work with your nails anyway, so things are coming along.
Oh, perfect.
We'll try to get that date for you. Okay. Any other ones for you, Councillor McEwen? Looking to my left. You guys good? Okay, council committee reports. Councillor McEwen.
Thank you. September 25th, I attended the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board of Trustees, where their 2022 to 2026 financial plan was adopted. It was a balanced budget of $31,274,714 for 2022. And of course, the bulk of that is levies by the contributing communities. System-wide, it works out for 2022 that it's a 3.84% increase. But for Ucluelet, because of our population, it's going to go up 7.01%. And our CFO is hitting her forehead. 7.01% increase in 2022.
Never start using the library.
Exactly. And that's mainly, the levies are charged to the contributing communities because the provincial government support has just declined, for many, many decades. In fact, it hasn't declined, it's just stayed the same for many, many decades. And of course, costs of everything else are going up. So that's why the levies are to the communities. And on September 27th and 28th, I attended the Costco conference that Council so kindly let me attend. And Costco stands for Council of Senior Citizens Organizations of BC, representing seniors in British Columbia since 1950. It was, there were some really great speakers. The BC Seniors Advocate, if you've never heard her speak, she's fantastic, Isabel Mackenzie. We also had, we had a whole variety of speakers, but there were breakout sessions as well. And apparently there was a record keeper that was keeping track of everything that happened during the conference. And those of us that attended will get some notes, which I'd be happy to share with everybody. And on October 5th, I attended the Tourism Ucluelet open house here at the UCC. And that was, I don't know how well attended it was. There's probably 30 people when I was here. Yeah, but there was some good information, some great boards to put little colored dots on your favorite things to say about different things. And it was all about the future of tourism in Ucluelet and what the town's population's vision is for that. And yeah, it was really good. I'm sure Denise, who wasn't there, will probably have a synopsis for us. That's it for me.
Thank you.
My turn.
Councillor Camps, it is your turn.
So at the end of September, I attended the first Ucluelet Secondary School PAC meeting, which we elected our new boards, and it was the same. We also talked about safe schools. There's a lot of things about safety in our schools coming up, so it was a big conversation. Also, it was a safety in our schools, bullying, and how we help with that. Safe spaces. Also, it was the first night of our DPAC meeting, the district PAC meeting. So I don't know if Councillor Cole, if you were able to attend, but we need someone from our schools to attend those once. I think it's only 5 times a year that we attended, but there's lots of funding to be had from DPAC. So we need to attend, at least a couple of us, because I could make it sometimes, but if we split it up a little bit. So, and I also attended the Tourism Master Plan open house as well. But it wasn't very well attended. I think there was a lot of there was a lot of focus groups prior to that, and we can ask Tourism Ucluelet to come and give us a little bit of synopsis when that's all done. And that was it. Thank you.
Councillor Hoare?
I had a quiet couple of weeks.
as a change of pace. But I did attend the Wild Pacific Trail meeting on October 6th. And just so y'all know, they got a new donation box installed down at Big Beach. So now they've got all the donation boxes out and about. And there is movement happening on those new lookouts. So Jim has said the spring because his ATV's down. And beyond that, I just want to say thank you to USS for putting on the Truth and Reconciliation exhibit. I lost 3 hours of my day in a one-room exhibit because that's the way I roll. Read everything, watched all the stuff on the iPads. I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, not getting anything done today. But it was worth it. So lots of really good info.
Councillor Cole?
So ACRD and then the PAC, which similar type, all that information that Lara already shared is happening on the elementary school level as well. In the West Coast Committee, of course, we saw that part of the report for the transit was the most exciting thing that came out of there. That was the takeaway from the last couple of weeks. That's all I have.
Big blur, right?
Kind of, yeah.
What are the highlights? Well, obviously, last time I sent my regrets for last council meeting. I did go to Thought Days, and it was wonderful to be over there, actually. I was probably the one only non-resident there, and I felt really, it was a nice little, their own little version of community Yuki Days, and it was nice to participate, so thank you. And just more recently, because I was top of my head, Mr. Lawrence and I, we had a little meeting this afternoon with Minister Osborne, just doing a check-in to see how UBCM went for the group and if there are any big takeaways. If he was just doing a check-in more as a or MLA role, and then meeting Mr. Lawrence for the first time and getting a couple more contact information to Andrea, who was very helpful. So that'll be good.
Just a question for the mayor. Can you tell us anything about the Ucluelethat state of emergency that they declared on October 7th, which ends on the 14th, I believe?
Which will probably be extended again. So yeah, speaking to President McCarthy, we spoke to him just a few days ago, and obviously there was an event where some non-locals for their community came in for a little party, and it was triggered to be the hot spreader in their community, which is concerning. And I think it's just a reminder of what's happening here at the elementary school, for that matter. It's everywhere, and pardon me, in the high school. So he's just asking everyone just to respect the rules, and the biggest struggle that they have are their citizens respecting the rules as well, and just trying to follow best practices. But happy to report that things are going well for them.
Great, thank you.
Okay, moving on. Other business. Any other business for anyone? Question period. Any questions from the audience? You guys have been very quiet today. Okay. Are there any public that would wish any questions via Zoom or the telephone?
I have nobody wishing to speak at this time.
Okay, well, thank you for attending our meeting today. Any emails received at community input? Okay. No closed section, so we are now adjourned. Thank you very much for attending. I thought the OCP was going to make it a little bit longer, but I think that was good.